Well, welcome once again to Fork in the Road, where we speak to the leaders in sports, business and entertainment. We talk about their careers, their habits, their journey, and ultimately their fork in the road moment. Now, I think when I was thinking of this, I definitely created Fork in the Road for stories like Brendan Fevola. So Brendan Fevola, he just came down as a young buck from Narre Warren in the southeastern suburbs. He was picked number 38 in the 1998 draft. Go on to be one of the great forwards of the game, just pumping up my old mate here. He won the Coleman Medal in 2006 and 2009. Should have kicked 100 goals. Didn't want to bring that up again. He played 204 games. Obviously had a few off-field dramas, but at the end of the day, he was a gun forward that kicked 623 goals. Welcome, my old mate, Brendan Fevola. How are you going?
I'm good, cause. I'm very well. Yeah, slipped down to 38. That was a bargain, wasn't it?
It could be deemed as a very big bargain. Not many bargains go down at number 38 and kick over 600 goals.
Yeah, you're right.
So how's the
back then, though, when I got drafted, you're obviously still playing. I think you might have just won the granny in 90. You win the 98.
We won 99. We beat Carlton at that point.
You beat us in 99, but 98, I went to the Blues. And back then, like the draft now, obviously anyone can get picked. I think it's 18-year-olds can get picked. But back then in 98, there was a 17-year-old sort of mini draft inside the draft where each club were only allowed to have one 17-year-old to go. And I had spoken to Geelong. Geelong was going to take me with their first pick, and I got invited to the draft, and only 8 players got invited to the draft back then, and they thought we'd all go in the top 10. So they were going to have them all there ready to go. And that was Desi Headland, and he went pick 1 to Brisbane. 17-year-old Troy Longmuir, who now is the coach of Freo, he went to Freo pick 2. And I remember at draft camp, we're at the police academy. That's where we did it out at Waverley. And Desi Headland walked into the Brisbane recruiters meeting. You know, you go meet the recruiters and you speak about your life. And he wore Brisbane kit. He wore Freo kit and said, I don't want to go to Brisbane. I want to go number 2 to Freo because I don't want to leave WA. Don't think that went down real well. But they still picked him up. And then I was supposed to go to Geelong, first pick, and they picked up Peter Street, one of you big, tall ruckman, Dopey. That was a silly pick.
Don't put me in that category. With the greatest respect to Peter Street.
and now he ain't a power forward you are. But, yeah, they enrolled because I was still in year 11, so I was still in high school, and they enrolled me in a school down in Geelong, and then they were the only team that didn't pick up a 17-year-old that year because they were going to take me. So they thought they'd get me a bit later because other clubs couldn't pick 17-year-olds. And then, pick 30 come along, pick 20 come along, pick 30, and I'm sitting there with mum and dad, and I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, I'm not going to get picked up here. Everyone else had been drafted, and I'm like sitting there, they've all got their colours on, all the teams that they played for, and I'm sitting there in my Stingrays kit with my ponytail, sitting next to my little brother going, God, I'm going to have to play TAC Cup again next year. I'll go pick 1 the year after anyway. But that wouldn't have mattered, probably a bit more coin back then. But anyway, pick 38 come along, and Carlton read out my name, and I was like, oh, I hate Carlton. I hated Carlton so much, and they picked me up, and then they put a hat and a jumper on you straight away, and the next day I had training, and then all of a sudden I loved the Carlton. So it was a matter of 24 hours that they turned me. So it was a bit different back when I got drafted.
I know, but then you speak of Carlton, Fev, like we know, and even my experience, it's a little bit daunting when you walk in the front doors of the Carlton Footy Club. How daunting was it as a young kid that you're walking into a club that's got Ratton, Silvani, all these big names? How daunting, even for someone like you, how daunting was that?
Yeah, mate, I was a 17-year-old kid. The draft was on the Sunday, and the Monday we started training, and I remember rocking up to the old Carlton Heatley stand where you walk in and you walk in, and on the left is the reception, and then just past the reception before you walk down the hallway where it's got all the great players that have played 200 games and 150 and 250. There's like a pigeonholes for all the players' stuff that they used to put in, and Stephen Silvani was standing there. And I've walked in and I've just gone, oh, shit, I wanted to walk out the back door. And I'm like, oh, my God, what do I say to this man? He's not going to know who I am. And he come up and shook my hand and said, welcome to the footy club. Congratulations, Brendan. I'm Stephen Silvani. Call me Sauce. And I was like, no shit, Sauce. What's this? And he walked me down the thingo. He didn't even take me to the locker room. They were doing weights. And he took me up to Aaron Hamill, actually, was my weights partner straight up. He goes, this is Sammy Hamill. He's going to take you through the weights. And our other weights partner was Brett Ratton. And, Rat's never done weights. So
he didn't know where the weights room was.
He just stood there with Fraser Brown and he'd be down doing handballs all the time, just handball games all the time. And Aaron Hamill is a beast. You look at the man, he's a massive human, eats weights. And I was this little skinny, 86-kilo kid trying to do bench press, mate. I could not walk the next day. My arms were killing me. And I'm looking around and there's Michael Sexton, Andrew McKay, Sauce, Cooter. They were hanging out together in the corner having coffee. They were always together. Andrew was his handbag. And you got Brett Ratton, a superstar, Craig Bradley, Stevenson, all these absolute stars. Lance Whitnell, who's probably got the best footy brain that I played with. He was a freak. And I walked in and go, oh, my God, what's happening here? The first couple of weeks you're in a cloud. You don't know what's going on. You just go, how good's this? And you're just this little skinny kid that couldn't get wet in the shower. And I was pretty lucky that when I did get drafted, I got drafted at the same point as little skinny Lappin, one of our good mates. And he lived out at Pakenham. So I was in Narry. So I used to go to training with him all the time. And I loved the Saints. I was a Saints supporter when I was a kid. And I used to sneak down. I used to sell pizzas at Waverley, and I used to sneak down in the rooms because it was that's where the rooms were. And I'd sneak in and I'd look at all the players, and I used to love Skinny Lappin with his long sleeves. And then I was travelling into training with him. I'm like, what's happening here? This is I was in year 12 for God's sake. Like I'd about to start my VCE, and I'm hanging out with all these superstars. So I was pretty fortunate to play in this successful side early. And as you know, in the 99 grand final, we made a grand final. I was emergency for that. We probably would have won. You wouldn't have a medal if I played. But I reckon you were pretty happy when we beat the Bombers by a point. I remember I did a sporty with your great mate, the Duck, and the great stories that everyone tells at Sportsman's Nights. And they were talking about the 99 grand final, and the Duck says, I don't know if he's pulling everyone's leg, but he said, we were sitting down at a pub in North Melbourne and we were watching, and then when Carlton won, we all got hammered and said, well, next week we're going to have a medal around our neck.
I think he's having a little bit of poetic license with that.
It's like, God, how about that? That's confidence. But
that's unlike Duck to let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Good old Duck. But, yeah, so I was pretty fortunate to be around such superstars. I remember Craig Bradley once said to me, I reckon it was a mad Monday of that year, the following year after we lost that granny, and we're walking across to the old Norton's pub, which is on Royal Parade. It used to be a famous pub all the Blues used to go there, and I reckon you boys might have ventured in there a couple of times. And Braddles wasn't much of a drinker, and me and I know it was a year after. It was 2000, and I was walking with Hoops because it was Ryan Houlihan's first year, and we're walking across the road, and we were crook because we were good drinkers. I soon fixed that up. I've become a professional. And Bradle said to us, he goes, boys, make sure you appreciate your footy because it goes like that. And I was like, shut up, old man. Like, you think, mate, please, I'm going to be in this for like 10, 15 years. It's going to take ages. It's going to be the highlight of our life. And, mate, when I finished at 29 or 30, whenever I did, God, man, it went like that. And those words I always remember him. I vividly remember walking across the road and he looked and saying, it goes so quick. And everyone says that, but you don't realise how quick it does go.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
What about if there's I still have a giggle about this, but if there's any person that would play well on New Year's Eve, it would have to be you. And what was it like? What was it like playing on New Year's Eve? Let alone the fact that how did your night go after that? Once you kicked 12 goals on New Year's Eve, the Millennium New Year's Eve.
Well, building up to it, I remember the year before we lost the granny to you guys, and Wayne Britton, who was our coach, he was assistant coach, but he's sort of taken the reins, a bit like what's going on at Essendon at the moment. where Parko was the coach, but Brits was his right-hand man and he was taking over. And I remember Brits at pre-season training said, because I had the ponytail and stuff, and he said, mate, you need to get your hair cut and you'll play round one. And I was like, oh, God, I've got to get really fit, cut my hair, got everything done, had a really good pre-season, because didn't play in the granny. It sort of hurt a little bit that I didn't play because you just expect to play.
Yeah.
Obviously, I was young and not good enough to play, but had a really good pre-season. And then we played that game. I think it was an Ansett Cup game. That's going back a bit. And I remember because it was New Year's Eve. We were down in Hallam and it was about 12 o'clock, and one of my good mates, Shane Horan, from high school, had a party. They were going out through the day. And you know what it's like when you get drafted, you don't want to be a snob and not hang out with your mates. So I thought I'll go to the party and just hang out, see all the boys, and then drive into the MCG. So I packed my bag, got there, and I was sitting around. And, you know, when you go to a party, they've got all those shitty little like pies and pasties and chips, and I couldn't eat any of that. So I couldn't eat that before a game. It got to about 2 o'clock. The game was at 6:30. Had to be at the MCG at 4:30. Got to about 2:30. And I was like, everyone was getting real pissed. And I was like, I was getting phoned. I had a can of the White Devil. I had a can of Jim Beam. And I would sip on it and just social with the guys. It was a New Year's Eve game. But anyway, things that go through my head aren't well, Corey. You probably know that. And then I had another one because I was feeling good. I was like, this is amazing. And then I thought, shit, I shouldn't be drinking. I've got to drive into the MCG. And obviously, shouldn't have been drinking. And then, because I didn't eat all day, and on the way in, I thought, I don't want to get pulled over. This is going to be a nightmare. What's happening? And then I got real hungry, so I pulled off the freeway, and I went down Clarendon Street, and I pulled in, saw the big golden arches. And I was starving. So I got myself 2 McChickens, I smashed them, drove into the MCG, kicked 12. And I remember one of the boys coming up to me about in the third quarter. He goes, Fevy, we're going out tonight. Stop kicking goals. It's taken ages, man. Like, if you keep kicking goals, the game's going to go for an extra half an hour. And I was like, man, I don't know what's happening. It's just all working. So I tried to do that for the next 2 years, and it didn't work. Having a couple of McChickens before a game did not work. But, yeah, playing out there on New Year's Eve, I think I kicked the last goal of the millennium, which is pretty cool. 12 goals on the MCG at any time, any footy, you remember it forever, I suppose.
But just on that, like when you think about it, as players, I think you get so anal about your preparation and doing all the right things. If you get that balance right, you find it actually doesn't make that much of a difference. No one's advocating that you're going to have 6 cans of bourbon and McChickens, but it's just that if you find that balance, and that's where invariably I reckon you would have found the balance, because you like having fun and that sort of things anyway. So did you find that if you ever got too serious before games, that was just no good for you from a performance point of view?
I couldn't get too serious before games, even in meetings and stuff. And when we're warming up, I was in my own little mind. Sometimes when you're getting rub downs and stuff before the game, you start thinking about tackle, pressure, kick goals, lead out, and you play it in your head. So by the time you run out, you're literally mentally exhausted. You're like, oh my God. So I try to blank all that out of my mind, because I just wanted to go out, cross that line and have that 2 hours of fun like I was a kid. Back in the old days when you're back at local footy. And I think a lot of players lose that perspective because especially now there's so many coaches telling you to do this, do that, do this. And by the time you get out there, you're like, I've already played this game in my head. Oh God, I'm fatigued. I'm not physically fatigued, just mentally I'm drained. And then you lose and then your mind wanders. So I wasn't one to really get into that in preparation. But food and drink-wise, I never really drank. I didn't drink midweek. But after a game, I'd like to go out and have a few drinks. But mate, I'd rock up on the Sunday or the Monday recovery and I'd train really hard. And I found that when I didn't drink, I wouldn't play good the next week. Like mentally, I was like, if you didn't have a couple, even if it was like 4 or 5 beers, I felt like I didn't reward myself, and then you didn't play well the week after. It was weird how it worked. But then if you went out and had a massive bender and like we get home at 2, 3 in the morning on a Sunday or a Saturday night, and then you go out and kick 8 the week after, you're like, ooh, I'm out again next week. That works. But I was pretty good with my diet. I ate pretty well. I always try to eat the same sort of stuff the night before. But I was you get superstitious, but I'm not superstitious.
Yeah.
If you played really well, you try to do everything the same the week after. You want to get your massages at the same time, your physio. But then if you played a really bad game, you go, oh, God, I've got to mix that up. I've got to change it with something. Because you play our good mate Dennis said it's, 90% between the eyes and 10% talent.
Yeah.
That's what he used to say, didn't he? He said something like that. I didn't listen to much what he said, but I think he said something like that.
Now you could pretty much say that you and I, we had maybe sliding doors moments, because if Dennis doesn't come to Carlton, well, you're pretty safe to, you were effectively gone. With Wayne Britton being the coach, if he had been...
Oh, I got sacked.
You effectively got... So how weird of a feeling was that you actually got sacked and then you actually then go on to do what you did? It must have been pretty strange.
I suppose we have different stories about Dennis. Den. You left North to get rid of him. And then you go to Carlton, win a B&F, and then he comes and coaches. Stiff. But I remember the day. I drove into the Royal Parade. Yeah. We had a meeting after the season's finished, and I sat in the room, and there was Wayne Britton, Johnny Worsfold, Rossi Lyon, and Barry Mitchell were our assistant coaches. We were sitting there. You know, when you walk in, you've usually got that piece of paper that has all the 8 weeks that you got off, all the stuff that you have to do that you throw in the bin on the way out because it's a holiday. Who does that 8-week period, mate? Please. And there was nothing there. And I sat down, and I was like, it's a bit weird. I sat down. I reckon I was in there for a minute, and I think I played 12 or 13 games that year in 2001, I reckon it was, 2001. And he said, mate, how do you think your year went? I said, cocky little bastard I was. I didn't get enough opportunity, you know. I thought I had a pretty good year. And he said, you're kidding yourself, mate. We're trading you. And I was like, whoa, that was it. And I literally got up, walked out, hopped in my car, and as you do, I rang Mum. And Mum's a pretty quiet lady. I said, Mum, I've just been given the arse. And she said, you effing idiot, what are you going to do? You got nothing to fall back on? And I hung up on Mum, as you do. And I was like, I don't need that. I drove down. I was living with Simon Beaumont, great man at the time. And I walked into Bowie's house. And I said, how'd your meeting go, mate? He goes, I got an extra couple of years extension on my contract. And I said, mate, I might need to borrow one of them because I've just been given the arse. And he couldn't believe it. He was like, oh, my God, what's happened? So as we did, it was off season, so we had a bottle of bourbon. He loved his bourbon.
He loved his bourbon, Bowie, didn't he?
He loved his bourbon. A couple of stylos sitting on the balcony, just chewing them. And then I remember we got onto the second one because this was mid-afternoon, and I was pretty pissed at this time. And I remember the Old Sports tonight. It was like it was about 10:33, I reckon. And I remember, and Mum rang. I said, what is she on? I said, Mum, what are you doing? She said, are you drunk? I said, yeah. She goes, when are you going to learn? I said, what do you want, Mum? She said, Wayne Britton's just been sacked. I said, you effing beauty. I hung up the phone. I got Bowie. We went down to Prince of Wales. I got home at about 6 o'clock in the morning. I can't remember what time. It was really late. And about 7:30, 8 o'clock, I get a phone call from the footy club, CFC, on my phone. I picked up my phone. I'm like, oh, what did I do last night? I'm like, oh, no, I can't remember. I let that go through to Gilly, didn't answer. They rang about 3 times. I thought, oh, mate, I've been given the arse. I'll answer it anyway. And on the other line was Dennis. And he goes, g'day, mate, it's Dennis Pagan. G'day, son, Dennis Pagan here. I'm going to be announced coach on Friday. I need you to come in for a meeting this morning. And I was like, oh, my God, I'm hungover. I felt like crap. And I go, oh, my brother's just down from Queensland. Made all this shit up. My brother's down from Queensland, and my mum lives in Somerville, and we're having brunch. Haven't seen him for a while. Can I make it in the afternoon? And he said, yeah, no worries. Come down at 4:30. I was like, bang, set my alarm at 4 o'clock. Woke up 4 o'clock, fresh as a daisy. Got in my car, drove down to Royal Parade. I walked in the same room I got sacked in 24 hours before. I sat down, and the cocker was sitting there, and Den was like, oh, mate, I love the way you play footy. I'm going to back you in 110%. You're going to play every game next year. I'm just going to back you in. You know, I think you're a star. Mate, and he went on for 20 minutes. I had no idea what he was talking about because I was like, I wasn't real good at math. I'm going 22 games, matches. Shit, how much money is that? I've just been given that. And I was trying to work it out in my head. And I walked out of the room And this is where Dennis may put a little froth and bubble on me jumping up like a Toyota man and doing the, yay, oh, what a feeling. That never happened. What happened was I walked out and in the office sitting Lance Whitnell, and Lance Whitnell was sitting there and he was at 5 o'clock and he was nervous. And he goes, because obviously you know what Dennis is like and we know he's really revered, sent you guys to 8 prelims or 7 prelims, 2 flags, and everyone was shit scared of Dennis. And I go, mate, he goes, what's Dennis like? And I go, mate, I walked in there playing 22 games. I haven't even done anything. He loves me. I got him wrapped around my little finger. And Lance didn't say anything because Lance wasn't a great runner. Wasn't a good over pre-season like myself. And I go, mate, Lance, get in there, mate. Blow wind up his bum. You'll be right. I got a tap on the shoulder and it was Dennis. And he goes, mate, you want to get sacked twice in 24 hours? I went, oh, no, this is a disaster. But Dennis was great, and that was the sliding door moment because if Dennis didn't come to the club, I wouldn't have. I don't know if I would have been playing footy. I don't know if any club would have picked me up because I wasn't really travelling that well. But yeah, so I was very fortunate that the Cocker come to Carlton.
And then,
unlike you,
yeah, it was interesting, wasn't it? But then, how much did it disappoint you that I suppose at the end that you couldn't make it work at Carlton? Because the year you left, and even to this day, I'm still surprised by this, but the year you left, you kicked 89 goals. Now, if you kicked 89 goals nowadays, you'd win the Coleman by probably 20 goals. So how disappointing was it that you couldn't still end up with the Navy Blues, and especially during that period when they were crying out for a power forward like you?
Yeah, we had a couple of like we'll sort of set up to have a crack at a flag, I suppose. We that last game in 2009, we played in the final against Brisbane in Brisbane, and then my next game I think was for Brisbane against Carlton. What the odds of that have been at the Gabba, and mate, we're 30 going into the last quarter. This is how my mind works. We're going into the last quarter. And in 2009, I was thinking, 33 points up. And I think it was Cameron Clark. I looked at him and I said, mate, we're going to play in a granny. This is the first elimination final. He goes, what do you mean? I go, Bulldogs have got covered next week. We'll beat them. We'll play St Kilda in the prelim. We'll beat them. And then we'll be in a granny. And then 15 minutes later, we got beat. They kicked, mate, they went nuts. Brown and Bradshaw just went berserk. And I walked off that ground going, what just happened? Like, that's how quick a game can turn. I'm thinking, oh, my God, we're about to play in a granny. And then, obviously, the Brownlow happened. Did you see the Brownlow? Did you see that? That was fun. Were you there that night?
Yeah, I've heard it's some sort of an award that people go to.
Yeah, all that stuff happened at the Brownlow, and, you know, that was my fault. Mistake. I got drunk, made a dick of a sliding doors moment, I suppose. You wouldn't behave the way I did, and that put me up for trade. The footy club said they're going to trade me, and a lot of water went under the bridge from that period to trade period, where I actually vanished. I went up to Queensland, and we stayed at a place called Sovereign Island, which is a beautiful place. We're going there for a holiday. And I remember at the time I was going for a run, and I see this beautiful car comes screaming around the corner, and the Sovereign Island's like a gated community. And this bloke nearly runs me over, drives up into the nature strip, and I'm like, what the hell? Fraser Brown, he's got a place there. So he's nearly driven me off the road, and at the time, Rats was our coach, and they're best mates. Fraser's like, what are you doing, mate? And I said, he goes, been a tough couple of weeks. I said, yeah, mate, been a tough couple of weeks. He goes, mate, we're having a barbie at my joint. Bring the missus and kids over, and we'll get on the piss tonight. Well, today. So we went around to Fraser's joint. He's got had a beautiful pad there. I don't know if he's still got it, but we sat around and we got pretty drunk. And he's like, let's ring Rats. Let's ring Rats. And I'm like, no, don't ring Rats. Don't ring Rats. I think he rang, he left a message, and they put me up for trade. And then I remember getting Eddie Maguire, because I was obviously great mates with Ed, and I'm still good mates with Ed, and I think he's been on your show.
Yeah.
And he said, mate, we want to bring you to the Pies to win a flag in 2010. We'd love to get you at the club. What are your thoughts? And I said, mate, love to. Keen as mustard. They were going to fly up to the Gold Coast on the Sunday before the Monday trade period started, and I was talking to him for a fair bit back and forth, and Sticks wouldn't trade. They said no, Collingwood weren't going to trade for me to go to Collingwood. Obviously, they didn't want one of their best players going to help them win a granny, and you fast forward a year, they won the granny. And I was going to go to Saints. I spoke to Nick Riewoldt a fair bit because I was good mate to the Saints boys down here in Melbourne because I live Bayside, so we always play poker and that together once every couple of weeks. Get around to Warnie's house and play a lot of poker with the Saints boys, and used to be Hodgie and Luke, Gary Ablett used to come down from Geelong. It was a great bit of fun that we used to always have every couple of weeks. And Nick said, we'd love you to come to the Saints. And I had to take a massive pay cut. So I thought, no, that's not a good option.
That's not happening.
Not happening. And anyway, they both play in a grand final. So I could have been in a grand final, never got to play in one. And I remember on the Thursday, so there was a couple of other clubs that were interested, but because I was on a fair bit of coin, it was hard to get in to the salary cap because at Carlton there was no one really else to pay by me and Juddy at the time. We had a lot of young kids coming through. We had some superstars in Murphy, Gibbs, Cruiser, all these blokes coming through. And it got to the Thursday and the trade period was a Friday at 2:00. And I remember because my management at the time was Alistair Lynch for Velocity Sports, and they were run up in Queensland, and that's who Michael Voss used to own that company before he got the job at Brisbane. And he said, mate, I've been speaking to Vossi and they're pretty keen to get you to Brisbane for a 3-year deal to help out Brownie because Bradshaw's, I think his knees are cooked, and I think I can say that because I think he went to Carlton for medical and his knees didn't pull up that well. And a lot of people say that they traded him to get me, but the actual fact was his body was breaking down.
Yeah. And
I think he went to Sydney and played 5 games or something. So that got proof in the pudding there that did happen. And anyway, they said, we'd love you to come to Brisbane. And I thought at the time, Alex is pregnant with our 3rd child, Lulu. It'd be great to go up to Brisbane and just hide away up there because not many people know footy, which is good. And it's more of a rugby league union town, and I can get away from the bubble of Melbourne. And little did I know that when I walk across the street, everyone's like, Willie Mason, Willie. I'm like, mate, I'm not Willie Mason. I'm the dickhead from the Brownlow. So everyone noticed me anyway. So that didn't work. But I remember the Thursday night, I agreed to go to Brisbane, and then everyone just thinks that I got sacked. So Stephen Kernahan calls me on the Thursday night, and we're staying at Sovereign Island, and I've got it on speaker, and Alex is listening, and he said, mate, we're not going to trade you. It's not going to happen. We want you to stay at Carlton. We want you to be there round 1, playing against Richmond, kick the first goal, bang, it'll all be forgotten and you can have a big year. We've got a great side. We're going to be pushing, to play serious finals. And at that time, and I wasn't in a good place at the time, and I said, mate, no, I need to leave. I don't think I can go back now. You put me up for trade. It's going to be awkward. I'm going to go. And he tried back and forth. And I remember telling a story at a sportsman's night, and I didn't know Sticks was there. And it was a corporate function, and I told this story, and I said that Sticks sacked me because I was going to beat his goal kicking because I wasn't far off being the greatest goal kicker at Carlton ever. And I said he was the president. He sacked me because I was going to beat him. And all you hear is this bloke with a crown. He go, "That's bullshit, fam." It was Sticks. And I was only joking. But he did. And a lot of people said that he did go into bat for me, and they did. They wanted me to stay at Carlton, but I left on my own accord. And I don't have any regrets in life ever because you do things for a reason and you learn from it. But that's a regret that I did leave Carlton. I wasn't a one-club player. You know, I could have gone down. We could have won, you don't know, crystal ball. You could have won a flag. You could have played in more finals. Could have played 300 games. Could have been the leading goal kicker for the club ever, which would have been amazing. But I didn't, and I went to Brisbane. And, and then obviously everyone knows that story. That didn't work out too well. And, so I regret that I left Carlton because I remember watching from Brisbane when they had the riots at the front. There was like big stampedes of people at the front saying don't trade Fev, and when you look back and see that, it's like you meant so much to the supporters. And being a forward, I loved our supporters. I was first there at family days and last to leave. I loved hanging out with the supporters, and to let them down in a way that I did, and obviously your teammates and stuff. But when I did leave, I thought it was for the better for me personally, and for the club, because I got in trouble a bit and it wasn't good for the club and the history that the club had. But looking back, I wish I had stayed.
This episode is brought to you by National Make Good Solutions, experts in taking your commercial property back to the day it was built at the end of your lease. And that was going to be a question a little bit later on. Now, I don't know whether this is the biggest compliment I think I can probably pay you, but I suppose throughout all this process, whether it was the highs or lows, or we've seen a few lows of what you've actually been through, I've said to everyone that I said, if I was ever going to take anyone into a corporate function or take them to a footy clinic, there is one man that sits atop of the list, and it would be Brendan Fevola, because you've got this ability that you can engage with anyone. You have fun at footy days. Where does all that come from? Or is that just like what we've seen before our eyes? I know that and again, I'm jumping forward to a question I'm going to ask you later, but even with I'm a Celebrity, get me out of here, people got to see that side of you that even I've known in the background for many years, that you are fantastic with people.
I think it's probably like mum and dad are pretty easy. My dad's a pretty easygoing guy, and he was a lacrosse player, so I was always around the sheds when he used to play for Melbourne and represented the state and Victoria and Australia and stuff, and I was always around people, so I loved being around people, getting involved. But I remember when I was a kid, I wasn't a kid, I was 16, and it was 1997, and the Saints played in a granny, and one of my favourite players, I went to ask for an autograph, and he didn't sign it, and I was shattered, man. I was shattered.
Who was it? Let's name him, Fev.
I'll get to the point, but I'm great mates with him now. He's a ripper. And I found out, I said, I'll never do that when I play footy. Yeah. I'll always sign everyone's autograph because I know how I felt. And then anyway, I saw him at Starbar one night going back forward a couple of years, and I was hammered. And I was like, mate, you didn't sign my autograph. And he told me what had happened, that specifically half an hour before he walked out of the change rooms at Moorabbin, that something tragic had happened in his family. Oh. And he was really upset. Oh, man. I was like, oh, I've held this for like years. And I felt horrible. But that didn't happen to me, I suppose. I don't know if I would have been that person at a footy club and been at the family days and stuff, because I don't know if I would have, but it affected me so much that I never wanted someone else to feel like that, even though I didn't know the circumstances of it. And anyway, that happened, and I told him about it, and we have a laugh about it now. It taught me a big lesson, I suppose, that I never wanted to feel like that, like I did when I was a kid. But, I love being around the people. I think it holds me in good stead now. Obviously, being in radio, you get to talk to people all the time. And as you know, when we go to your functions and stuff, there's nothing better than sitting down with people and having a beer and chewing the fat. And life's too short, man. You got to have fun while you're doing it. And I think I do that, which is good.
Yes, you do.
That's the first time you've ever complimented me too, by the way. Thank you. Appreciate that.
No, you know that I've been a rap for a very long time. And for people out there, Fev is one of the few people outside of North Melbourne, and he knows the nickname that at North Melbourne, where every North Melbourne player would actually call one another, and Fev's adapted it for me. So it's he's nearly inner sanctum North Melbourne that he calls me Brains. So
I haven't called you Brains on here because I thought you might crack it. I was like at the start, I was like, oh, g'day, Brains. And I'm like, oh, I better not, because you might. I call you Brains all the time. Brains McKernan.
No, I can look, for those that are out there, it's an endearing term at North Melbourne that for blokes that are good mates, and Fev is a good mate, and I'm more than happy he calls me Brains. So now, just on the stint in Brisbane, what was the biggest thing that you learned about yourself when you went into rehab and you had to go through that period where you had to, in essence, start to rebuild yourself while you scratch your head there?
How good's it do going? Look, Brisbane, I don't really talk much about Brisbane, but the Brisbane Footy Club obviously showed a lot of faith in me going there, and they paid me a fair bit of coin to go there. And I loved it up there. It was great. The weather was great. And, mate, we started off like a house on fire. I got really fit. Brownie and I were both leading the Coleman. We were 4 and zip, sitting on top of the ladder, humming. Like, we were playing some really good footy, and Vossi and the recruiting staff had got a lot of players from experienced players from other clubs. In myself, Stakes. There was Clarkey from St Kilda. Who else was there? There was big. Who else was there? Oh, there's a few of us, and it was a great environment. A little Eamon Buchanan was up there. He'd won a premiership at Sydney, and we started off really well, and everything was going really good. And then we played a game in Sydney where I tore my adductor, and so did Brownie, same game. And mate, I was getting injections left, right, and centre before games at a half time. I couldn't walk till Monday, Tuesday, but I'd be able to play, but I just couldn't train, and I was on crutches throughout the week. Brownie missed a couple of weeks. We both went to Adelaide. There was what's that guy's name? He went to North Melbourne. He was a physio, not the physio. He was one of those guys that looked after all the bodies. It was a groin man from Adelaide. I can't remember his name. We went and stayed there for a week with him. Then I'd come back and play because we were playing in Adelaide that week. So we stayed up there, and in round 16 or 17, I ended up getting someone landed on me, and I did the splits, ripped my whole groin off my bone, and never played another AFL game after that. But then obviously things started to spiral out of control, and I started punting heaps, man. I was on the punt, losing a lot of money, and then Alex left because I was losing money, and she went back to Melbourne and left me by myself, and things turned a bit pear-shaped, and sort of in a way, well, not in a way, but they showed a lot of faith. Brownie, Blackie, all those senior blokes, Lukey Power, and I sort of didn't really do them justice because obviously they all agreed for me to go there, and sort of shit in their face a little bit in the way that I behaved when I was up there, and wasn't all in. I was all in at the start, but then obviously things ventured, and I confided in Vossi a fair bit. Vossi was great. I put a bit of stick on him jokingly around the traps, but I opened up to him about everything that was going on, and he was always there to help. And that's what coaches are. They're there to help. And I know that he's my coach, so he's got to be there to do that. But he went above and beyond to help me and try to look after me and the family. And I sort of didn't repay them in a way that I should have. And evidently it ended up in a mental clinic in New Farm. I was supposed to be in there for a week, and I ended up staying there for nearly 70 days, 60-odd days. And being there, man, it was not well. I had a few issues going on and ended up getting sacked in rehab, which was awful. But I think it was probably the right move that they had to make, because they had to make a call on it. The season was coming around, and they made a call on that. And it's probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because it made me realise that I don't have footy anymore, because that was it. I'm not going to come back and play at 30 years of age after being in rehab and being left 2 clubs and being sacked. People in there, man, they're really sick people. Some people have been institutionalised for a long time. And I got to know them quite well, because when you're around people for a long period of time, you get to know them. And some of their stories, mate, were horrific. And I didn't really have any of those stories. All the stories were pretty much affected my own life, where I've gone out and sabotaged everything by myself, against myself, where other people had stuff happen to them from other people, and it was just awful, man. And that was the fork in the road, as you call your show, Brains, and that was a big moment. The moment Vossi sacked me to now, everything's been really good, man. It's bizarre, because I always thought footy was my life, and everyone's like, 29, your footy, the life's over, but my life sort of just begun. I had 3 kids at the time. I was separated from my wife. Lucky I took her back. Now we're engaged. She stuffs up again. She's done. That was a joke. No, I was very lucky I had her by my side. She came up from Brisbane and got me and took me back. And then I played some footy at Casey, which sort of got the love back for footy. And I didn't really love footy, man. I was over it. And I thought I'll go back to VFL level and see how mate. I went into rehab at 99 kilos. I was fit as. I had the watt bike up in Melbourne for the pre-season in Brisbane. I got really fit. And then ended up in rehab. And then from all the drugs they put you on, man, like the Seroquel and all this, that just bloat you. And I ended up rolling out of there at about 128 kilos. So I put on...
Whoa.
Yeah, I put on close to 30 kilos in a matter of 3 months or 2.5 months. And I went down to training at Casey and I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. And I ended up going out with this guy called Gibbo, who was a assistant coach at Casey, and he was a member at the Casey Aquatic Centre, and he'd take me in there and I was doing extra sessions and I dropped all the weight. My first game outside of AFL, so I was playing at the Gabba in my last game, and the next game I was playing twos. Didn't even make the senior team. Oh, God, what's happened? Played out of Port Melbourne, and there was a 9:30. I was kicking the shit off the ground of the Jew, and, mate, there was 1,000 people there. I've never seen so many people at a twos game, and the media were everywhere, and I managed to roll in a couple of snags, and I spent a couple of weeks in the twos, and then I finally got the call up into the seniors because I got fit and I was ready to go. And I think in the last 10 games, man, I think I kicked like 50 or 60 goals or something like that. And I got the love back for footy a bit, and a club said that they might take me in their last pick of the draft. And I said no, I didn't want to get drafted. I didn't want to play footy anymore. Mm. And then I went up to Yarrawonga, man, and played up in the country, which was awesome.
And how good was it just seems like it was these little steps forward, all these different phases of what you're actually talking about, but then moving on to, you rediscovered your love back of the game, and then to go up, and be a part of the community with the Pigeons up there. And I know even talking to you whenever I'd see you, how much you actually enjoyed like the whole process of, it wasn't just the playing football, it was everything that went with it.
Yeah, and you talk about your North Melbourne days and your mates. Mate, my really close mate, I've got a lot of close mates at Carlton, but really good mates that I still hang out with now is my Yarra mates. And, mate, I remember getting a call, and it's pretty funny actually, because obviously I lost a lot of money on the punt. And I used to bet with sports bet with Matty Tripp. And this was a year later, man. I was sitting at home with Alex, and I get this call at like 9:30 at night, and it says Matty Tripp. God, Jesus, this is like a year later.
Yeah.
So all my debt's been paid off. And I'm thinking, what the hell is Matty Tripp ringing me for? Do I owe him any money? I don't understand. So I let it go through to the keeper. I'm like, I'm not answering that. Alex is going to kill me. I'm like, I don't know what he's ringing for. And then I get a message, a text message saying, "G'day, mate, it's Matty Tripp. Hope you're well. I've just played golf with the president of Yarra," because he's a Yarra boy. So they've just lost their third grand final in a row to Albury, and we're just playing around a golf. We've had a few pots, and we're like, how do we go outside the box? How do we beat these blokes? And then the president said, why don't we get Fev to come play up at Yarra? Anyway, he sent me through a deal, and I didn't have a job, had no money. He sent me through a deal, and I was like, I'm in. I said, I'm playing. I go, where's Yarrawonga? I had no idea where Yarrawonga was. And because I used to holiday at Echuca, Moama, I've never had no idea where I said, man, where's Yarrawonga? And he said, on the border of New South Wales, Victoria, it's right next to my whaler, blah, blah, blah. And they've got like this jet, they had this like plane, and I could fly out of Moorabbin, land in at Yarrawonga, play footy, fly out. I'm like, how good's this? Anyway, so I signed, I went up there, played my first game, so I was only going to play home games. And then I played the first game, Easter. Man, there was like 20,000 people there. It was unbelievable. Like, it could not move. They were 8 deep. Like, they ran out of alcohol at quarter time of the reserves. It was unbelievable. I had to order more beers in. It was just the biggest buzz. And I didn't really know what the footy was like. So when I drove in on the Saturday, I'd never been up there. I drove in. Joel Smith actually took me up because he's a Yarra boy, and he got me up there. And as you drive into the Yarrawonga Footy Club, talking about falling from grace, driving into the MCG, we have our own little car park and stuff. It's really cruisy. Mate, you got to drive through a caravan park over some speed humps. These little sheds, they've got the Murray there, and then there's this little footy ground with like a tin shed, and I'm like, what's happened? I'm playing a game of footy in a caravan park. Anyway, I loved it. It was just the most amazing experience. The people were great. By about round 3, I reckon I played every game. I said I'm happy to play every game.
Yeah.
Don't worry about paying me for the away games. I'm keen to play. And I remember at Myrtleford, where the great Gary Ablett played a couple of games. I think there's a few superstars that come from Myrtleford. And Keka, great North Melbourne man, might have played.
He is from Myrtleford, yes, I think. I've heard him.
And they rang me and said, mate, we really want you to play because we're getting really big crowds to come. And they said, we really want you to play against us in our home game and we'll pay you $5,000 to play against us. And I go, mate, all right, no worries, I'm in.
Where do I stop?
We rocked up to the game and there was thousands of people there and I've kicked 16 against them.
So I think you justified your pay packet. I think you.
And then afterwards I donated the money back to them. They told me about a story of a young person up there that had a baby that was crook and, the Ruby cribs, is that what you call them? And
yeah.
I put $5,000 back to the footy club towards that and donated it back. And I just didn't want to take their money because I kicked 16. I'm like, I've got to give the money back to them because they had no money at the time. And, mate, the crowds that we were getting at the grand final, there was 17,000 at the grand final when we played Albury. We ended up winning the flag, which is my first premiership we ever won. And, mate, they're some of the greatest moments in footy that I've ever had. I played on the MCG in prelims and played for my state in Victoria at the MCG in 2008. But winning that grand final, man, it doesn't matter whether you play at Nana, Goon Twos, your Oz Kick, your under-9s Lightning Premiership, all grand finals, you feel the same. I remember driving to the ground, man, my stomach, I had butterflies. I'd never played in a senior grand final. And to win that, it's just amazing. I'll have that forever, that memory. And then we went back-to-back. And then ended up living up there and coaching them. We lost the grand final, lost our third. So we played the same team 6 years in a row, and we lost the third one by like a kick, I reckon. It might have been 4 or 5 points. So it was an amazing time. The people in the country are amazing people, cause they just love their town. They love their sport. It's either footy or netball. When the kids have a baby, yes, we've got another footballer. Yes, we've got another netballer. You go down the street to get some bread, man. It takes an hour. How's footy going? How's Yarra going? What's this? We'll play some golf. They just talk. They don't stop. Like you go down the street at home, mate, no one gives a crap who you are. They don't even talk to you. In Yarra, mate, everyone just chats with each other. They're really grounded. They're level-headed. And I was pretty fortunate. Alex and I divorced when I was up in Yarrawonga. That's where I went up to live a couple of years. And I got a phone call one day. I was on a Mad Monday. What happens on a Mad Monday? And it was about Tuesday. And she called me. And
it was on the Tuesday, Mad Monday.
We played Sunday because we played Sunday. It was Sundays to the finals. And she said, I want you to come home. You've changed since you've been up in Yarrawonga. I want you to come back. And if it wasn't for Yarra, I wouldn't have been where I am today. I wouldn't be back with my wife. We wouldn't have another baby. Yarra really, really changed my life, man, for the good.
Really did. And then you managed to keep all that momentum going then you went into the jungle and you're on it. Like I mentioned before, I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. Yeah. Like I mentioned, I think that's where people got to see even the Brendan Fevola that I've always known for years and this other side to you as well. What was it like to go into the jungle and can you, when you're in there, have you just got an awareness the whole time that the cameras, in terms of what you're saying and how you're behaving, or are you really conscious of that?
What a bad question, Brains. Not a bad question at all. Good question.
I've been thinking about this.
It's a good question. Mate, when I got the phone call from Channel 10, it was late 2015, and I was sitting with Alex again, and I got a call or an email from Channel 10 saying they'd love me to go on Celebrity Get Me Out of Here Season 2. Mate, I hate camping. I love food. I love my phone. I love TV. I hate bugs. I hate mosquitoes. I hate everything about camping. Never camped. Don't like it. I said to Al, mate, they want me to do this because Alex supported me all the way through. Like I didn't have any money. She was paying for rent and everything up in Yarrawonga, and she had been amazing. And I moved back down to Melbourne, and I told her, and she said, mate, you need to do it. You need to earn some money. You've got no job. It'd be great for you to go in there and let people realise why I love you, because people think I'm an idiot for being back with you. I need them to see what I see because everything gets written about you and stuff. And then I said, well, what happens if I get voted out early, hun? Because I get voted out by the public. Like, if I get voted, she goes, don't worry, hun. You got nothing to lose. Everyone will still think you're a fuckwit. I was like, that's not a good comeback, hun. Anyway, I said yes. And then ended up going over there. So you don't know who's there. So you fly over. I was there a week beforehand. And you go, like, it's very, like, we'll all have these names. So all names of chocolate bars. So when we go, so we're saying like safari parks for the week. And if you go out, they take you on like safaris and stuff, and then they'd be on their mics because you had like a bloke to look after you. And this bloke looked after me. He was a tattooist from South Africa, and he used to stay with me. So it was just me and him, and it's, like all day, every day. Like we had no phones, nothing, couldn't do anything. So we just sat at the bar and got drunk, man. Him was the best. He was a great fella. And we were on this trip, and they'd be like, Rocky Road's coming around near the elephants. And I'm like, who the hell's Rocky Road? And I go, and the bloke goes, oh, well, you've all got nicknames, and yours is Rocky Road, because I had a Rocky Road, so that was my chocolate bar name. And I'm like, what's happening here? Anyway, we get into the jungle, and man, it's daunting. Like, you literally, people go, oh, it's filmed in Queensland, it's filmed here. Mate, you're in South Africa, you're in the middle of the jungle, right near Kruger National Park, and it's just like there's lions and there's full-on bloody black mambas floating around, and they've got security guards. So they had these guys who were the poachers, the anti-poachers that they stay in the jungle and try to stop people from cutting off rhino horns. So they look after us. So they're all set around with guns, like ready to shoot at live animals if they come in or like dart them. I'm like, what's happening here? We're in this middle of the jungle. There's big orangutans floating around. They were right with me because they thought I was one of them. I was just whoop, 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 whoop. Mate, they're landing on the trees. It was unbelievable. Like the first couple of days, it's like at night time you can hear, and you're like, don't know if that's Warnie trying to get in your bed or it's a bloody monkey. I don't know what was going on. And you meet some great people in there. There was obviously Shane Warne, who I was mates with, so I sort of knew he was going in. He was the only person I knew because I had the Shane Warne Foundation as my charity. The big chief, who you'd probably know, he was an amazing man. He went in there just solely for his best mate, Husey, who had brain cancer it does similar to Carrie, a bit more with the Brains for Beanie campaign. And he was in there just for him, to raise awareness for his foundation. Anthony Kalea, who I've become great mates with, we were just pests in there, and there was Havana Brown, and there was a lot of other. There was Val off the prisoner, Val Lehman, who was great. She was 73. She did an amazing job. Sorry, this is Tobes. She just jumped in, and it was an amazing experience, man, because you could actually just be yourself, and that's what Alex's purpose for me going in as well was to actually let people see that side of you. And there's no hiding in there. You speak about the cameras and that. And you look at the shows now, like all the reality shows like The Bachelor and The Bachelor in Paradise, you think, oh, my God, they're wankers. Have a look at the way they act. But, man, you lose. You don't realise the cameras are there after a while because you just become acclimatised to it. Like, and you don't see the cameras in the jungle because they're hidden in bunkers with all trees over. So occasionally at night time you hear one of their phones or something ring. You're like, what the hell? What's that, a phone? Because you just haven't heard. We could hear them talking. And so you just lose track that there actually are cameras there, man. You don't, and you think, oh, my God, what have I – you lay in bed and you go, what did I say today? Did I say anything that's going to bloody – and I remember when Warnie said something about Steve Waugh. And I was like, man, you can't say that about Steve Waugh. Remember when he said – it was front page. We heard it was front page in the paper back there. And mate, Warnie's a freak. He did a thing with Kyle and Jack's radio there. He got a date with Carmen Electra in the jungle.
In the jungle,
because he was talking about his number ones or like who he'd like to date, and they obviously heard it because he goes back to Australia, and they said, Carmen. So he went into the Talkie room, they got him a phone, and he organised a date with Carmen Electra in the jungle. The man is a freak.
Only he could do that.
Only he could do that in the middle of nowhere. And then I was lucky enough at the end to get to the end, and one of the great moments for me was if you make the final three, your family come over.
Yeah.
And I wasn't quite sure whether Alex was going to come because she said she didn't want to go. And so my brother was a person who was going to come. And then it got to about 5 days left, and a lawyer. They have a lawyer that comes in to the. Hang on a sec. She's with me. Where's Toby? She's with me. and you have to sign documents to get a parent to travel to South Africa with a kid. Has to have the father or the mother sign that. So both parents have to sign. So when that come in, mate, the lawyer comes in and goes, "Oh, Fev, we need to speak to you." When I was in the talking, I'm like, "A lawyer? Oh my God, what's happened?"
What have I done?
I've got no idea what's happened. You're in there for we're in there for 40 days. I've got no idea what's going on in the outside world. And I'm like, "A lawyer?" And I walk into the doc's room and I'm like, she sits down, she's got all these papers and she goes, "I need you to sign these." I said, "What's happening?" She goes, "Oh, it's for your kids to come over." And I was like, "Yes, the kids are coming if I make the final three." And then I walked out one day and little Lulu was sitting there in the camp, and I just dropped everything and grabbed her, and, mate, I think I started crying, and I cried on TV. I couldn't believe it. I was so lucky to be on a show like that and to be able to give money to an amazing foundation. And then I went down to Newcastle the year after, hanging out with the Johns boys, because the Newcastle boys, they all won a flag in 97 with each other, and I was there, and I presented Mark with a $50,000 check, and, mate, you've never seen someone more happier with life. And the feeling I got from that was incredible, that I could go on a show like that, be able to give $50,000 to him, and also $50 to a young kid named Will, who jumped off the pier at Port Melbourne, not Port Melbourne, down at, remember Black Rock?
Yeah, I do. Yep.
Down at Black Rock. And he was an 15-year-old schoolboy who was a superstar in footy, cricket, was going to be a number one draft pick, and now he's paralysed. And Shane Warne also had him with his foundation, and the money was going to go to him. And I remember a year later, I went to a game of footy with Bo Morris. I think he played for Bo Morris, and I tossed the coin, and it was the first game that Will hadn't played with those kids since under nines. And I remember speaking to the dad, and the dad come up and said, "Mate," he goes, "we're sitting on the couch, and we're like, with you and beforehand, we've got you and Warnie, there's like 5 left, and a chance to win $100,000, and then it was the final 2, and we're all sitting on the couch, the whole family, Will's in the wheelchair. We're like, we're going to win $100,000. We're sitting there, and bang, we've won $100,000. He goes, "I've never lost $50,000 in so quick. Within 10 seconds, you're giving half of it away." And I was like, "I'm so sorry." And he goes, "Nah, mate, I know what you did. It was amazing, and $50,000 is going to be amazing for us." So to be able to be in that position, as I said, was amazing for us. And, my life really sort of changed after that. People got to see me as me, and, opportunities opened up, which was great.
But I think, as you mentioned, and I'm conscious of time, we've only got a few questions to go, but I think what happened out of no, it's actually a good thing. It's actually a good thing. No, but I think what actually then happened out of that is obviously the opportunity that's led to Fox FM. Now, with Fox, are you conscious at the moment that you're on Melbourne radio that do you sense that you've got a bit of a responsibility to lift people at the moment? Because it must be like even going on air and doing what you're doing. And you know what? I think everyone that's watched the entire interview is seeing what you're actually really like.
Yeah.
Do you sense that when you go on Fox that you've got to be up and about, and I've got this sense of responsibility, I've got to give everyone a real lift?
Yeah, 100%, Brains. Like mate, I've nearly been in that 5 years now, so it's an amazing job. I've landed on my tippy toes. I'm a very lucky man to be able to talk on the radio and drive people to work. And that's from without the pandemic, you've got to, we get up very early, but a lot of people around Melbourne, and we get over 1 million something listeners. So everyone's driving in at 6 o'clock and they're like, "Oh, I hate work." And we're going to be on straight away to try to get everyone upbeat before they get into work and have fun and talk about topics that are relatable. And I'm pretty lucky that I work with Boxy, Fifi Boxer and Byron, who we get along with really well. We've got a great chemistry. And we have fun, man. We have fun. We do giveaways. We play. We give away money. But especially in this time now, we're very fortunate that we're able to work and we're able to speak. And obviously people are listening to us more at home now, which is great. But in a way, it's really hard to be upbeat all the time in this time, because so many Melburnians, mate, have lost jobs. Small businesses are doing it tough. Kids aren't at school. They've been homeschooled. Parents are at home. Mate, the world's changed. Our lives have changed. So to be able to be upbeat, which I am an upbeat person, but to be upbeat all the time, and we have giveaways. At the moment, we're giving away $50,000 to guests, and our phones go nuts because $50,000 for someone in this time, and not even bad this time, is a lot of money. And you hear people's stories when they ring in and they're struggling, and they've got people we did something with the care packs to the elderly, where we send them out because they can't see any loved ones, and we've got their mums and their daughters and their sons ringing up crying on air because they haven't seen their mum or dad for, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks, and they can't touch them. And mate, it's really emotional. And Fee, it's hard for Fee. She gets really emotional, and I get emotional. And I'm just very fortunate that I'm in a position where I can work, and I've got my family at home, and my wife's, at home with my kids, and we've got a 20-year-old kid that can look after the kids when we don't look after the kids, which is great. It's very hard, but we're in a fortunate position to be able to execute this on air. And it's bloody touching, man, to be able – and when people ring up and send me DMs and stuff saying, we heard you guys this morning and I needed a laugh. And you don't realise – so when I'm talking on radio, man, I just think it's like you and me talking.
Yeah.
I don't actually think that there's like a million people listening. And I think that, like, I say things and they're like, man, people can hear that. Like, oh, yeah. I don't, because you're in the studio and now we're at home. It's just like I'm talking to you on the computer.
Yeah.
Or via Zoom, because that's how we tune in now. We're via Zoom connecting to everyone in Melbourne. I just think it's us talking, and it's just chilled. Like, sit back and chat. Don't realise it's going to every other house in Melbourne and every radio station. But I suppose that's the beauty of what we do, I suppose. And I'm pretty fortunate to have that job. It's been amazing. And, Fox is great. And what they give back as a station to our listeners is incredible. So, I'm very lucky, man. Very lucky boy. To have what's happened and be down and, like, I had everything. I stuffed that up and lost it all, my own doing, and then be able to come back and be here. I'm pretty lucky, man. I'm pretty fortunate.
And I did.
It'd be no good if I had to go get a job.
You do remember when I walked up to you at Hash's Poker Night, and I hadn't seen you for a little while, and I'd seen all these things, great things you've been doing. I think it's one of the first things I said to you. I go, if you stuff this up, even I'll belt you.
You too.
I walked up to you.
If you stuff this up, man, you're done. I'm like, yeah.
Look, it's like I mentioned off the top, to be able to, it was one of the reasons of coming up with this whole thing around doing Fork in the Road, to be able to sit down and talk to people about their journeys. But in particular, when I've got two of my great mates, so I've got Wayne Carey, who's done a lot of work and got himself into a great spot, but none better than my old mate who I've just got to spend an hour with. And as I mentioned about Duck, that you're incredibly proud of the work that you've done on yourself to get back on your feet, and everyone gets to see what you really like. I've always known you. I did think I was nearly going to lose you briefly when you jumped out of the Bounty in Bali into about 2 foot of water.
Remember that? Wow.
I do remember it, and I'll never forget it. Not a lot at the time. But
I didn't think it was that far. Oh.
Yeah, I knew how far it was.
I was drunk.
But like I mentioned, look, I think the Brendan Fevola I've always known has been incredibly generous and amazing with people, and it's just great to see where you are now. Yes, there's been some trials and tribulations, but you know what? It makes for a bloody good story. And on behalf of everyone on Fork in the Road, mate, just a pleasure to sit down and have a chat for an hour.
Thanks, bro. Hey, mate, for a bloke who's called Brains, mate, I've watched a few of these. You're doing a good job, man.
Hey, I might be coming to Fox Feds. Won't be getting that haircut though.
Hey, you did well on Fox Footy too. Very good.
You got the late call up with Fox, so it was pretty enjoyable.
Got Lynchy covered anyway.
He was your manager.
Thanks, Corey. Appreciate it, man. Thanks for the time, man.
All right. Thanks, brother.